Hey there, everybody. This is Kristin from Teaching Balance, and I am here with you with this week's mindfulness meditation session. And this is going to be our final practice in relation to the month of focusing on self-acceptance. And we've looked at it through a variety of lenses, as we do. So I thought it would be kind of interesting for this last session to focus on something that you've probably had the experience of before, but basically what I'd like to do is invoke what that experience is like outside of the context of when it actually naturally happens. So the thing I'm thinking of as far as like a name for this is the idea of hindsight is 2020, which of course we've all heard that. Now, you could say that about a lot of things, the choices you've made in life and, looking back on mistakes and what was I thinking and things of that nature. But that's actually not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is if you've ever had the experience of reflecting on your past, and of course, in line with this theme of self-acceptance, self-compassion, self-love, whether it was purely in your mind's eye or if you found yourself having the experience where you look back at photos, whether like they're printed photos or photos that are online somewhere or digital, where you kind of look back at yourself at some moment in your past. And you have this moment, and again, this is my experience, I'm assuming this happens to lots of people, where you look back and you're like, for me, that girl, that young woman, was so much harder on herself than she needed to be. I look at photos of, let's say, like my, 20s or something like that, and I am pretty confident that for most of my life, I've always been rather self-critical and feeling like I could always be more fit or, whatever it might be. And then I look back and I'm like, girl, you look fine. You look great. Stop. Well, if I could send a message back in time to past me who was expending so much unnecessary mental energy on self-criticism and putting pressure on myself to improve and change and be something other than who I was, it would be a pretty powerful thing to be able to go back. And of course, in line with this theme, hindsight is 2020. I see that now as a 50-something with, the clarity of time. But at that moment, I didn't have that perspective. So what is the significance of this along the lines of self-acceptance? You probably maybe are anticipating where I'm going with this. The idea is, in this moment, in this present, right now, wherever you are, whatever age you are as you're listening to this and watching this, what if you could imagine that there's a future you, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, looking back on this current you, which for future you is past you, thinking probably many of the same things like, why did they work so hard? Why did they put so much pressure, or why did I put so much pressure on myself? Why did I not see, something that is of value and meaningful that I now know in 2045, but I didn't know in our case, early 2023. So I think you get the idea of the spirit of it, because I think there's value in, no, we can't go back and change the past of our younger selves based on where we are in our timeline at the moment. But what we can do is we can almost imagine and embody the perspective of that future us who will be looking back with that 2020 hindsight and perhaps making some changes regarding our self-acceptance, our self-love, our self-compassion, since this is the only time that we can actually do it. So a little bit of a slightly more far out way of looking at things, but I just think there's something to be said for that. And you can take that whatever direction feels resonant for you. Now, of course, one of the things that helps us to cultivate self-awareness so that we can have these moments of epiphanies regarding future me wouldn't want me to be so hard on myself, future me wouldn't want me to be so self-critical, etc. We can have these spontaneous moments of self-awareness, self-realization, I think more spontaneously and more naturally and with more ease because of our meditation practice. So let's go ahead and get down to it. I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes as usual. Oh, wow, both shoulders cracked. Sorry, that just made me laugh. And when you're ready, if you haven't already, closing your eyes or lowering your gaze and taking some of those slower, longer, deeper breaths. And just allowing ourselves to settle in. Remembering we can always circle back to that deeper breathing if we find it supportive. And not putting any pressure on ourselves to breathe perfectly, to meditate perfectly. In keeping with our theme of self-acceptance, we're just going to be very open to and accepting of how this moment and this practice is. So if you find that your mind is all over the place, planning, imagining, whatever it might be, that's totally okay. You're just going to allow your awareness of that racy mind to see it. And if it's helpful, with slightly more nuance, labeling those different thoughts for what they are, like planning, strategizing, remembering, worrying. And then not pushing them away, but instead, once you've labeled them, just turning your attention back to the present moment, to your anchor of noticing the sensations of the breath, or noticing sounds, or noticing some other physical sensations like holding your body in its entirety in your awareness, or focusing on just one part like your feet. And just picking whatever feels easy. find yourself being drawn into putting pressure on yourself or having expectations regarding how you'd like this to be, remembering that's just more thoughts, totally expected. And we're just going to once again see them, perhaps label them, and then just come back. And if today you're finding it on the easier side to remain present in that state of mindful awareness, just keeping going. And if you're finding it's a little more of a struggle today, I just want to acknowledge that, of course, that can happen. For many of us, it's most of the time. And even though it might be tempting to judge yourself and say you should be better at this or something along those lines, just acknowledging that it's not really that easy. The irony, as you've heard me say before, is that even though it does require effort to notice our minds have wandered, to catch ourselves thinking, and to bring our attention back. But then when you get back into that sweet spot of just sitting, there is something very deeply restful about that. And I'd invite you to allow that to nourish you in whatever way feels right. Taking the rest from not feeling obligated to follow our thoughts all the time. So for the last 2 or so minutes, let's just sit in silence together until that final bell. Just coming back again and again to that restful, mindful awareness state as best as we can. that's our 10 minutes. So happy end of self-acceptance month. And I think next month we're going to kind of proceed along a similar vein, but not quite the same. So I won't spoil it for you, but something to look forward to. And as always, thank you so much for taking this time for yourself and for allowing me to accompany you on this journey. And I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.